This week, we take a look at a Forbes article that talks about Dungeons & Dragons and a new game from Portal Games.
Plus, our topic of the week, the mechanic of worker placement. We take an in-depth look at what games use it and how. I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Will Keeler, and this is a Roll for Crit podcast.
Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition was released a little less than a year ago now, and Forbes had an interview with Nathan Stewart, the brand manager for Dungeons & Dragons, kind of talking about how things have been going for them, what their reaction has been to the 5th edition from their side and from the consumer end. And there's some pretty interesting stuff in there. For one thing, they're very happy with how it's going. People, they said, have been getting into it old and new. Also, there's a big spread of hardcore players and people just getting into it like we were. And then they also have been talking about things like, obviously, the sales have been bigger on Amazon now than they've ever been, but still pretty big at hobby shops and gaming stores and things like that. And he talked a little bit about their future plans. Right now, they are doing 1 to 2 new stories a year and not planning on any big revisions to like rule books, so there won't be a Monster Manual Part 2. They're really just focusing on new adventures that they release. And that was a big focus, he said, was story. That everything, whether there's new classes or new races or monsters, is all as a result of what is happening in the storyline. So as we saw when 5th edition came out, they're really focusing a lot on that aspect of the game, the story, the actual role-playing element of it. And some other interesting stuff on the digital front. He said they are looking into, he wants to find new digital tools for the game that will allow people to still interact with each other in real life. So rather than everyone looking at a screen, things that will aid them, but they can still actually look at each other face to face. I don't know exactly what that means. He didn't go into details.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
We're getting the Dungeons & Dragons collectible card game.
That could be. Well, he did also talk about, on a larger effect, he would like to see D&D as a bigger franchise, movies, etc. And his big push that he really wants to see is an open world RPG along the lines of Oblivion, Skyrim, Baldur's Gate, a new D&D RPG.
So not in the sense of
a digital
World of
video
Warcraft,
game.
But more like...
Not an MMO.
Okay.
A single player, big scale RPG.
That would be interesting.
I mean, we've had like Baldur's Gate, which I think is set in the world, but he wants a new take on it.
Right.
After Sword Coast Legends, which is a different thing coming.
Yeah.
So a lot to digest there, but it sounds like they're doing well and they have some exciting plans.
Well, I think everyone knows D&D is like, it's one of the things, like, if you think of the board game nerd, the first thing you think of is Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
It's sort of and now that board games are starting to really hit their stride, it's not as much like only the people who don't see the sunlight dwelling in their basements do. I think Dungeons & Dragons are like, okay, we need to take advantage of the momentum, and that's what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They're not making it so it's not like you have to be great at math, rolling dice, and worry about numbers. It's all about, like you said, the story, which I'm sure everyone's happy about. Or most people. Yeah. There's always someone who...
Well, sure. Happy. I mean, you can make your own if you want.
I think that's a great idea to focus on the story, and that way you mix things in. Because that's actually what game expansions do. Going back to World of Warcraft, they didn't just say, all right, here's the Pandora update, enjoy. It was, all right, here's the whole new world. And by the way, that's why the pandas are here now.
Right. And
that way it wasn't like, oh, where were they before?
Right, yeah. And an RPG, the theme of it definitely should be front and center.
Yeah. I really hope they don't make a collectible trading card game.
I don't think they're going to. Well, they do have D&D Dice Masters. That's as close as you're going to get, probably.
Well, and plus you already have Attack Wing.
Right, so it's out there.
Hey, Dungeons & Dragons Amiibo.
It's gone too far, man.
I do think, actually, with the Wii U pad, that and plus, I'm sure you can do just if someone has tablet with syncing up with the Xbox. That would be an interesting thing with the D.
Yeah, maybe that's the direction that they're going to go.
In fact, because the Wii is more friendly, and I'm sure the other companies would have no problem getting on their systems. Something that maybe makes it easier for like a younger audience to get into.
Even if not like a DS or PSP, because it makes sense to have it as handheld. You can sit around the table with it. That might be interesting. Anyway, there's a lot of possibilities. But
it comes as no surprise. This is one of the biggest names in the tabletop community. And we'll see where they go from here.
So I recommend you check out the full interview if you're interested. It's pretty cool.
But continuing from that, Portal Games has announced a new microgame called Tides of Time. This is actually about sort of the rise and fall of human civilization. The way it works, it's a 2-player game, and pretty much it's a simple drafting game of different cards that'll score you different points depending how what happens, how you hold them and stuff. And you're going to just draft back and forth. And after you're done drafting, you're actually going to look through your cards, keep one, and that's going to be like a relic from the past that you keep for your next hand. And then one that you take out permanently. And you keep going until someone who's the most, I guess, most points, which is like the best civilization, smartest. I don't know. I can't remember the exact words. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a great idea for and it sounds like a perfect kind of micro game because it won't take up a lot of space. We were talking earlier that there are a lot of micro games out there, but a lot of them are micro in terms of just literally just maybe carrying. The actual game themselves takes up a lot of space on the table.
Right.
Or a lot of components. And I feel like this would not take up a lot at all. Like, this is the kind of thing you could expect you could go to a bar and literally sit at maybe a counter or a really small table and not thinking like...
And did you say it's 2 players only? Or
it said 2-player if I recall, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
I like the idea of that it's a micro game, but the concept is the rise and fall of human civilization. Like there couldn't possibly be a bigger subject to tackle for a small 2-player card game.
I mean, maybe it could be one of those things like if you each had your own copy, you can fit 4 people. And once again, that would still be, if you had a small table, it could still work.
I think this is the first micro game Portal Games has done, so it's kind of cool. Everybody wants to get a piece of this market, it seems like.
Well, I mean, it's sort of the market of what you always carry in your bag, your purse, whatever.
It's the new hotness.
But we've enjoyed other Portal games, so it's definitely something we're both looking forward to.
Absolutely, and micro games as well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you like the game Hearthstone. Moving on to a new subject. Of course, this is the...
Continuing with our World of Warcraft concept coming up.
That's right. This is the Blizzard CCG that is all digital, and it has been out for a while now on PC, and Mac as well, and on Steam, etc. They've just finally announced and released it for iOS and Android devices. So on your phone or your tablet, you can now download and play the game for free, just as before, with, of course, the option to purchase new packs and expansions and etc. So this is kind of a cool thing. It's not a huge story, but it is a fairly... I'm sure it's going to reach a lot more people now, because I know for mobile, like people with iPads and tablets, there's a big market for the casual gamers and just people who aren't really into the in-depth video games and stuff, who will take out their iPad and play Candy Crush and all that stuff. Well, I think this will fit that market.
No, I think what's important is, first of all, in terms of a CCG, I think Hearthstone is very popular. It doesn't punish you, though, for not knowing any Warcraft lore or not playing the other games.
Also doesn't punish you for not spending enough money.
Right.
To an extent.
But I feel compared to other ways you spend money, like, it doesn't punish you in the sense, like, well, if you want to play more, you got to buy some hearts.
Right.
You're getting more weapon. Like, you're actually doing it the way CCG actually works. So it's not...
It doesn't feel like they're ripping you off.
Nearly as bad. I mean, it's random packs, so...
It's sensible.
But, yes.
And now people will be able to take it on the go.
I mean, no, that's the big thing.
Actually, I think Hearthstone was already on iPads, now that I say it out loud, but now I think phones...
Well, I think the big thing is, because you might, even if it was on iPad, it might be only on iPads, not all Android devices.
Probably.
A big thing I actually realized the other day is some games that say, like they're for Android or iPod or whatever, not iPod, might not actually hit off your Android device. Mm-hmm. So if your certain tablet or phone might not get it, which is, I think, a terrible thing, because that pretty much is... I know one person said for one game, I'm not going to name it, but like their phone and tablet both could not use the app, so they're like, that's it. I'm not playing this.
Well, that's the thing with Android, is that because it's not
all
controlled like Apple is, they have all those.
But I'm sure World of Warcraft, is not done enough, and which is why I think it took so long for this.
Blizzard has the resources to do it right.
I think the other thing, you were mentioning how like just people who weren't into like, casual games. I think what's big about this is even the people who are into more heavy games and playing on the computer. Mm. Now, like, I know my one friend takes an hour train ride to get to work, and he plays Monster Hunter. But if you played Hearthstone and you're on the train, you can be like, okay, I'm going to play some games of Hearthstone.
Yeah.
And, that's a great thing. You can look at your collection. Maybe you can just mess around with your deck for a little while. I think it's very good, even though I don't play Hearthstone a lot.
I fell out of it long
Yeah.
ago, but I really liked it.
No, I don't think it's bad.
It's just you only have so many resources to devote to so many games.
And unlike you, I already was in like 3 different trading card games, so like it was harder.
We should do a playback of Hearthstone.
Actually, that might be interesting. Can we actually force to fight each other? I don't know.
Yeah, you can play with your friends.
Yeah. So our decks and everyone's like, when was the last time you touched it? Were you like, what?
So these ancient cards from like the first month it was released. Anyway, that's Hearthstone. So if you're a fan or not, check it out. It's free. Try it yourself.
Yeah, you should check it out. Like you said, it's free. It's still worth it. Yeah. And plus, I do think it's some interesting, unique mechanics. Like we talk about how they take on the first player per turn problem. So even if you're more into like developing games and stuff, whether board or video, I do think it's actually a great place to look.
Yeah.
But continuing forward. Earlier this week, on the 13th of April, was National Scrabble Day.
Yay!
Yeah, as you know, Scrabble is one of the most popular word games around. You pretty much make words on tile. I mean, there's not much to it. If you haven't heard of it, you really should look at it. It's one of those things that should be like, you should know.
Yeah.
The day, if you're curious, the day in question is April 13th because it's the birthday of the creator. Let me try not to laugh. Alfred Mosher Butts.
That's his name, people.
Yes.
Be mature about it.
The game itself has been around forever, since I believe it was 1933 it was invented.
That's forever.
Well, very long. Yeah. And actually changed some names along the way. And of course, the rules had to change too, because depending on certain words to get in, whether things we agree on, or maybe things like frenemy.
A legal word now in Scrabble.
And it's been grown very large. I mean, there are people who are like, their entire lives revolve around this.
Yeah, Scrabble is funny because it's a casual game, but it's still like there's tournaments and stuff. Like
it's so like there's 2 groups. There's the casual,
and
then all of a sudden there's the hardcore.
I feel like it's kind of the bridge between like our kinds of games and the classic kind of games.
But and of course the words always change. And one thing I actually learned, I didn't know this because we talked about this before, but it has an official word. In Dice Masters, we talk about people reaching in the bag trying to feel their dice.
Right.
Apparently in Scrabble, this is a constant thing to worry about, in which it actually has a name called brailing, and when you reach and try to feel for certain letters.
No, I thought the letters, aren't they like flat against tile?
Some probably have probably depends on your...
I think for tournament play, they probably phase that out by now if they're smart. They give them special tiles.
I mean, the idea of that, I didn't know it had a term. Brailing.
It's got a term. You know, there's a lot we had Tabletop Day last week, then Scrabble Day was like 2 days later. We got Catan Day is also later in the month. Mm-hmm. So big months for days.
So April is just board game month.
Apparently, Catan Day might be in May. I don't know. But
well, I think we should call it. This is board game month now. We're calling
it. April board game month.
But enough about Scrabble. Hopefully you played something that day. I don't know whether you're into Scrabble or not. But for now, I think it's time we got to our Kickstarter Pickstarters.
My pick for this week is Cuisine Alucard, which is a deck building game where you are trying to make the best meal to please celebrity or whatever you have you chefs. Basically, it's like a reality show you'd see on the Food Network in the form of a deck building game. It comes from InMotion Software, who actually, this is their first physical tabletop game. They've made mobile and video games before this. And as you'd expect, it follows the basic setup of a deck building game. But one of the reasons I picked it is because we talk a lot about how a lot of the deck building games we play are very samey. They tend to be. And this one I thought had a couple of interesting twists to the concept. For one thing, the way it works is you're buying ingredients that you like off a table, and there's 2 forms of currency, spoons and forks. So if you have spoon cards or fork cards, different things require you to spend different ones to buy them. And when you get an ingredient you like, you put it face down in front of you, and you can have 3 total ingredients face down in front of you, and when you have 3, that makes your meal. And then you submit that meal to one of the judges. And each judge has their own preferences, where one of them might really like sour food or sweet food or something like that. So depending on how you do it, and depending on how many points each card is worth, and whether or not, if you have multiple things from the same ethnicity or whatever together in a meal, you get bonus points for that. And so you'll get a rating, and if it's high enough, you win medals, and whoever has a certain number of medals first wins. And the other thing is, if a card has been out too long, it goes to the fridge, which means that you can purchase the top card from that deck for a discount. So that kind of some games do that where they'll like put a coin on top of something if no one's bought it, and then you get a bonus for buying it. So yeah, I thought it was a neat concept. You're building deck building, but you're trying to make food, and you get to have weird combinations. You can come up with weird dishes, and yeah.
Now I couldn't help but going through my head constantly when you're talking about this because I watch the Food Network way too much.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I want before the game starts, I want someone to go in the beginning and just go, "Ah, la cuisine!" Or when you go through, you actually have Alton Brown Cutthroat. You actually can pay off to be like, okay, now that person has to use canned chicken.
I'm sure there will be time for expansions
for all the evil or random. I watch too many food competition shows.
I don't think there are any take that cards.
No, I don't see how you could.
Well, you could. Well, it could be like a card
play it first,
when you play this, you stop them from spending that, or they have to discard a card or something.
Yeah,
they could do things like that.
But or switch up two people's ingredients. I watch a lot
Room
of
for expansions.
No, Cutthroat Kitchen is dying to be a board game. It asks for that.
So if you are a Food Network fan, you like that idea, check it out. It goes for $30, and you'll find a link below.
Anyways, my Kickstarter Pickstarter is one that was going to be my Kickstarter Pickstarter as soon as it came out. I've been dying to get my hands on this, or just at least see it. Is Millennium Blades from Level 99 Games. In this game, we've talked about it a lot.
Have we talked about it in the show? We've talked about it the two of us.
I'm pretty sure we have mentioned it on the show. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Is a CCG simulator. So it's not as much a collectible card game as much as it's simulating the sort of the tournament and the meta game of card games. So the way it works is you're going to have 20 minutes to actually make your deck from different packs and stuff. You're going to buy them. There's going to be a marketplace. You can resell them. There's going to be different metas going along too. Mm. And you can get points not just from the tournament, which happens after, but you actually will get points if you have a full collection, collecting games or how you sell them. So it brings up a whole different meta and a style. You have to think okay, in this game the robots are really strong because everyone loves the robots. And then there's the actual tournament, and you actually have different characters. One guy was power creep, and whenever you play cards that all match, increase your power and stuff. One, of course, is Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! All about money. And it's just all this really fun.
And you do actually, there is
you actually play. No, that's the first 20 minutes is making
game.
The first 20 minutes is making the deck.
Right.
But there's more ways to get points, not just the deck and you win the tournament, but like I said, the collection, how you sell games. Apparently how you can trade with friends, by the way, cards. So if you buy a game, hey, I'll trade you for that card. So this I think it's just fantastic, and it's really fun after, being in many CCGs myself, and actually seeing a game that sort of captures that sort of
the zeitgeist.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the right word, but it sounded good.
It sounded fantastic. Of course, this is just begging for expansions.
Well, so I love the concept. The one thing that scares me a little is I think it's very ambitious, and I know one of the things they talked about they want to do is actually releasing every few months, changing the metagame and having new packs, and literally some cards would actually be stronger based on when you play it and stuff.
Well,
that scares me a little bit.
Well, I do know is there actually cards that will literally say what the metagame is, so you can
within the game.
Yeah,
but they want to do stuff where you have to look online. It'll tell you things are actually changing.
I think that is still cool. We should also mention this from Level 99 Games. They do a lot of games, and we've loved everything we've played.
Well, that's why, given their track record, I have faith that they can
I will
pull it
actually
off.
say, apparently, for this game, they've worked 2 years on it in 20 different versions before they've actually had this Kickstarter.
I'm sure.
Out.
It's a...
So, it's not... This isn't something they just came up with.
It's a crazy undertaking.
Yeah. And like I said, it's because it's also Level 99 Games. Amazing artwork you can expect.
Yeah.
It's just... I've been so excited about this.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. I think a lot of people have, and I'm sure it's going to be funded soon.
Yeah, no, it actually just came out today.
Yeah.
So a few hours.
Filming this.
Yes, and of course I backed it right away. Yeah. And as I backed it, they're already halfway through the stretch goal.
So how much did you get it for?
It's $50 for the base itself, and of course there's more pledges when you want to actually design a pack, or there's also a play mat. It should be noted, I know that they're going to do add-ons. You can buy some of the other games, or I assume the playmat as well. But it's not pledge there. They're going to do that afterwards in the pledge manager, because they want this to sort of stand on its own.
Cool.
I think that's sort of a cool thing, and that way they can actually see.
Respect.
Yeah. But that's my Kickstarter Pickstarter. But for now, I think it's time we moved on to our topic of the week.
This week, we are taking a close look at a very popular game mechanic, worker placement. You'll see this in games like Agricola, Caelus, Stone Age, many others that we will discuss as we go on. But essentially, just a brief run-through of what worker placement is. Basically, there are variations on it, but usually you will have multiple actions on a board or as cards, what have you, or tiles, whatever it is. And each player will go around sort of drafting style, choosing an action they have. And generally you have a limited number of pieces that you get to use. So maybe you have...
Workers.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the basis. Like if you're workers, they're going out to get stuff. And generally also... it'll be a limit of only one person, say, per action. So if someone else decides to do something, you can't do that until next round, assuming you get lucky enough to get in time for it.
Pretty much first come, first served.
Exactly. So, as I said, it's been in many games, and we're not going to see it stopping anytime soon. Although I wouldn't say it's quite... even though there's a lot of it, I don't feel like it's hit that oversaturation mark like things like I feel kind of like deck building... and some other things have. It's because it's a deeper, it tends to be in deeper games, heavier games.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the issues too. I think a big thing is for us. I think we just happen to lean towards for what we've played. So it seems like I know there's a lot more worker placement games than we might know.
Sure, that's always true.
Worker placement games also tend to lean towards more of a European style gaming, in which the theme really does not matter. Like, you could take away all the artwork and just place your workers to do.
Yeah, because one of the things that always bugs me about worker placement, like in Agricola, is like, well, why can't both of us go get wood? Is there only one tree, and like you took the tree, or something?
Well, it's sort of like the elevator in Space Alert. You're just like, I really need my personal space.
Yeah,
please.
So you definitely have to get past that little thing. As you said, Euro games,
and because of that, I don't know why, but there's certain ones I just feel like are very hit or miss. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes I read them, I'm like, okay, this seems pretty cool, and then other times I'm like, okay, it's a worker placement.
It definitely gets, like, when I hear worker placement, I definitely get kind of like, okay, so I'm in for the long haul. Time to get serious and make some advanced planning decisions and for the next 4 hours or so.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the other thing. Then you're thinking, like, okay, I really want that, but I think Jonathan wants that too.
Right. There's stress involved, definitely. Although that's...
let's talk about some of our favorites maybe our... not favorites.
Well, let's see. I think the first one that I can remember that we ever played was Dominant Species. Do you think that's correct?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that was an early game for us. That's probably the first time we had that. And
that's a really long one, but
that's a big one.
I've enjoyed it.
Oh yeah. Definitely we like that game.
I think one of the reasons that I've enjoyed that a lot is unlike a lot of worker placements, usually everyone's on equal footing at the beginning. You're all the same baron or something. But in Dominant Species, someone's a bird, someone's an insect. So certain actions, because of the abilities of the thing, might be more beneficial to be doing as an insect, or like in my case, which I think it's usually random, but I always seem to end up with reptiles. And not that I love being reptiles. Like there's one action in which I can ignore because of my special ability, which I really like that, because that makes a bit more of a twist with how the game works.
Somewhat similar with Agricola, although depending on the number of players, the actions are usually the same, but your starting cards might change what you want to go for.
Right.
So, yeah, and then there's the opposite. There's games like Olympus, Greek-themed, where everyone is strictly on the exact same level throughout.
But I've enjoyed that one, too, a lot.
It's definitely... that's one I like, but... I do definitely prefer more of the random elements.
I know, but I think the reason I like that one, I think about it, is I just like the idea I have the whole deck of what I'm building.
Right.
Yeah, and the temple. Like, I think that, to me, that feels more, I don't know. It's more fun because I have this whole deck. It's not just gain resources or points.
Okay.
I know one that we haven't played, we read, is, it's not even on there, The Pillars of Earth.
Oh, yeah.
I admit, when I read it, I wasn't really... Like, I need to play it. I could be...
But now that we haven't played it, we still don't like it.
It's definitely... like, but no, that was one of the cases when I read it, I'm like, okay.
Right.
Like, it's not... Right. But, like...
dry.
Yeah. But Robinson Crusoe, I think, has been one that we both have loved.
Well, Robinson Crusoe is also interesting because it has a lot more going on. Worker placement is it is sort of the meat of the game, but it's also kind of just one phase. And then there's also, they're flipping tiles and you're exploring and stuff like that.
Another thing that's different.
And it's co-op.
Yeah, actually, that was going to mention. Unlike other things, you actually aren't like, oh God, I hope Jonathan doesn't take my hunting.
Right, and that way it becomes more of, all together we only have this many.
Yeah,
how do we spread our resources out?
And I think that fits perfectly with what the theme. It pulls a lot more on the theme than most worker placements.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I will say we were saying how that's another heavy one, a lot of heavy ones. An example of a lot lighter one is Harbor, which just came out recently.
Which we both have liked a lot.
So it is possible to make turn it into something
it's just, I think a lot of times it reminds me more of like chess. It's a game where you do moves, like everything's really on the board.
Yeah.
And it's just much more heavy on the strategy.
Sure.
And that's not a bad thing. It's just that both of us happen to play a lot more of the randomness because that's usually simpler. And
I like there's a touch of that. That's why I do think Agricola and, as you said, Dominant Species have that element in there. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, because there's also the buying of the cards.
Sure. Yeah.
Agricola, the one problem is Agricola, which isn't that hard to balance, though. It's just every now, like, I remember the first time we played it, I got that one card that everyone says you need to take out.
Yeah, Agricola, the cards
it was like the Summer Hut or something.
Yeah.
It was like, and I got an extra person, I called him like, yeah, that's our illegitimate son.
That's in every worker placement game, anytime there's something that gives you an extra person, that always is the way to go. That's
almost. Which made me think of another game. There was something that I can't remember, but no, yeah.
All right.
If you can somehow get 3 extra, I remember the Level 99 game, the Argent
the Consortium,
and that's a great one because what's there is your workers. Because depending how you start, you get your workers act differently. You don't just all have the same workers because they're all your students, and depending on what their major is, for lack of a better term. They do different things. Like if they major in like the fire, they're gonna shoot someone and take someone else's worker out.
Yeah. That I really like. That's the first time that I can think that really I've seen a game use the workers as very different entities.
No, like I think there may have been a couple games when there's like one worker who's different for a turn or something.
Like Robinson Crusoe is kind of like this guy you can only use on hunting or something.
Yeah, but that's only like in single player.
No, sometimes you can get those bonuses. You can build them. But regardless.
But overall, it's a great mechanic. It's one that takes a while because you have to balance it. So in terms of building it, it's a bit more difficult than the deck building, which is why I think we see it more in the Euro games. But at the same time, it's very easy to just make a game that is just binary or just strategy. Like what you put on it does not matter, and that's the biggest problem with worker placement games. There's nothing. You can enjoy it, but it's sort of disappointing when you open a game and it's just I could close my eyes and just put things down. Like you don't.
Right.
Like,
yeah. It's definitely you have to have that balance of, as we said, for pretty much any game.
And we have mentioned some games that maybe do it well, but then the designer who makes them makes other games, and you can tell it's his game. Like it's the same thing. I think you said the maker of Agricola,
Uwe Rosenberg, who does Agricola, and also made the sequel Caverna, very similar, and some other games with similar mechanics. That's sort of his shtick.
Yeah,
sort of his thing.
So that's a dangerous thing for designers to fall into. But in terms of playing them yourselves,
not dangerous for him apparently because he may still make tons of money.
Well, they're still all good. It's just I'm saying
sure.
It's sort of like some reason I get turned off, but the ones I've played, I've loved.
No, it is. It's usually that thing of I never get excited. I'm never like, oh boy, it's got worker placement. Whoa! But when you're sitting down and playing it's often a rewarding experience. It's just you got to be ready for it.
Right. And like we said, just a touch of randomness can always make things great because there's a lot of worker placement. Like we said, you always get more workers.
Right,
I've yet to see a game that punishes you hard enough to make that a high enough risk reward.
Yeah, no, that is also a danger. If when someone gets one of those, they start to snowball and get too far ahead.
Well, I think even making more general, it's very easy in a worker placement to find a strategy that always works.
Right, because you've got the same options always every single time. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so you gotta work around that, which I think a lot of the games we actually mentioned do a pretty good job of working around that. But maybe the people at home...
Or the ones we played, we should say.
We played all of them. Let's just be honest. We played every single one.
Of course, yes. We've played every game.
Maybe the people at home have some ideas as to what makes a good worker placement.
Or a bad one.
Or bad, or what their favorites are.
What their worsts are.
Something along those lines. Please let us know. You could either comment on this video. We will read it, maybe even on the air, if it's good enough. Or you can email us.
Let's face it. We're going to read it almost no matter what.
We have no choice. We love you. Our email address is rollforcrit@gmail.com. You can also reach us there and some other places.
Yeah, but before anything, you should subscribe here. Then you should head to our Twitter. We're at rollforcrit and, of course, our personal Twitters. And, of course, if that's not enough for you, there's always rollforcrit.com.
Oh, man. Rollforcrit.com. We've got great videos of probably some worker placement games in our playback sections. Maybe not yet, actually. And we've also got podcast news, and we sell games. I know for a fact we sell many of the worker placements, if not all of the ones that we mentioned on today's show. So, great prices, great deals, great fun, great friends, great food.
We're working on the food part.
You have to bring your own BYOF. Right
BYOF. That's bring your own friends, I thought.
It's whatever you want.
But until next time, I'm Will Keeler.
I'm Jonathan Estes, and this has been a Roll for Crit podcast.